Teacher Dan here again. All right, so I got to talk about some terms that have been thrown around here the last several years in education. Um, One, we're out by the koi pond again here. So, first one. What was it called? Some IT terminology, right? So adopted. Education keeps adopting this crap from industry, from like other things. What did they call it? Was it a scram board? I don't know what the scrim. No, scrum. That's it. Scrum board. That's what it was. So it was taken from IT, right? Where they, have teams work on a thing and they write down what their progress is on their part of the project and, whatever. A scrum, that's what it was. Now, we had a couple of teachers tried to introduce this at school. Some people tried to use it. It was, whatever for a while, and then it went away. It vanished, right? Well, it's, it may be fine for a software development team to use, but, it didn't really have the value in education. But it was a thing that some people tried to implement, and then it went away. It's gone. Most recently, we've had this term reintroduced. Not Scrum, different one. Flow, right? Flow. Okay. So I went to a professional training, whatever, PLC meeting. I don't know what the fuck you even call them nowadays. I mean, we're throwing around terms like crazy. But flow. Okay. So after this meeting, I was like, what? The coach said, well, it takes like 15 minutes to get into flow. And I went, huh? I don't know what we're talking about. What are we talking about here? So, I went, yeah, I mean, it was completely out of context. I mean, there was no kind of foundation laid for this idea. It's a garbage truck, sorry. There's no foundation laid for this idea of flow, all right? So I'm just kind of puzzled trying to figure out what are we referring to here, right? What is it that we're talking about? What does flow mean? So I went to it, one of my partners, and I said, what was that flow thing? What was that about? I was like, what was that referring to? He's like, oh yeah, I mean, there's this, neuroscience thing, whatever, flow states. And I went, oh, talking about a flow state. Okay. All right. I've experienced flow states. So I used to be a runner. I ran long distance, half marathon distance. And I did daily runs, 3 to 10K, whatever, training runs. And you get into a flow state. Now, flow is where you kind of zone out and your concentration is it's hard to explain. If you ever experienced it, you know what I'm talking about. It's kind of like where and there's various flow states you get into when you run, one of them is kind of where you're getting in the zone, right? And you just start to develop a flow. There's a lot of effort when you start, you kind of getting your body ramped up. And then if you're fortunate to get to a point where yeah, that feeling of like weightlessness, and the running isn't effort, and you're just kind of floating above the ground. That's a flow state too. And there's another one where you're just kind of zoned out, like your feet are like a metronome, you know, and you just, you know, you're zoned out and you're running, and your feet are hitting the ground, and that's kind of what you're experiencing. I've been in a flow state when I was painting with oils, for example, you know, where you just kind of zone out and paint. That's a flow state. Now, there are certain activities like athletics and art and things where you want to be able to get into a flow state, because that's how you kind of, you know, like really zero in your focus on what you're doing. But the reference here was in the context of instructional planning. Now, I've never been in a flow state planning, and nor do I intend to be, any more than I intend to be in a flow state when I'm using a circular saw to cut lumber. It's not a good idea. It's a purely cognitive activity. It's something that, you know, is a whole different type of thinking, right? So being in a flow state, you know, and I don't want my students in a flow state. I mean, you don't get in a flow state when you're in the process of learning a thing, right? You get in a flow state when you're doing something that you can do automatically and zone out and, you know, really just embrace the experience activity of doing it. So it's weird that this term is being thrown around. There's terms like this that get tossed around in education, where somebody picks up on a thing from some other field of study or some industry term or whatever, and they want to use it in education. And the problem with education is education does not have its own set of ideas. Okay? And this is what it comes down to. We don't have our own set of ideas. So when it comes to things like, I mean, education's made no discoveries in like 50 years. None. Zero. Zilch. Nothing. None whatsoever. No discoveries. Every other field of study has discoveries. They have things they figure out. Education doesn't have that. All right, so what's it do? It cribs from other areas. That's what it does. Okay, and takes terms from other areas and misapplies them and all kinds of things. So we have this, you know, just hodgepodge of ideas from other fields of study and other areas of work, and educators want to take it and they want to apply it to education, and it just doesn't make any sense. Education needs fundamentally to have its own ideas, and the problem is that nobody has developed these. We don't have them. Okay? Any useful work about how your brain works has come from cognitive psychology and neuroscience. And then we try and swipe these industry terms like scrum boards and, you know, flow and you know, from and even, you know, it's funny because kind of amusing aside about flow is, I think I found the video that the coaches were shown in training where it said it takes 15 minutes to get in the flow. Well, that video, to begin with, is questionable, right? But more than that, that's not even what it said. So, you know, it's misinterpreted by a bunch of people who are not experts in psychology. They don't know what they're talking about, and they're taking these terms and tossing them around fast and loose. And it creates, well, for somebody like me, creates confusion, but other people don't even seem to register on their brain at all. So we're going to come back and we'll get into contradictions here a little later. But Teacher Dan here, signing off.